After 2 nights of violent protest, tonight Charlotte, North Carolina is under close watch from helicopters above, from the National Guard, state, local police on the ground, and now a curfew set to take effect at midnight. Joining me now is the mayor of Charlotte, Jennifer Roberts. Mayor Roberts, I know you signed an order enacting a mandatory curfew starting at midnight. What led you to make that decision?
Well, we have been working closely with our law enforcement team, with our police chief, with our fire and medic, and assessing the situation hour by hour. We've also heard from a number of folks in our business community who actually are supportive of a curfew, and our chief made that assessment looking at what's going on the ground, that it would be the most effective way to help keep a peaceful evening here in Charlotte by having that curfew go from midnight until 6 a.m. We issued that declaration at 9 p.m. We wanted to give people a chance to finish up their business, get home, go to the grocery store, whatever they need to do before midnight.
How are things going from your vantage point so far?
Well, it seems to me that tonight is more peaceful than last night. We appreciate the fact that we have National Guardsmen here who are helping us, helping protect some of the buildings here, protecting property, and letting our police officers have a little more leeway and flexibility and actually being out in the streets with some of the protesters. And we've seen some peaceful protests. We've seen some folks marching around. But it seems to be more peaceful tonight than it was last night.
It also seems like tonight we've seen more people try to stand between police and some of the more vocal protesters to kind of keep the lines apart.
Well, I tell you, that's been amazing. We actually have a number of groups from our faith community. I've talked to several pastors and ministers, even Muslim leaders and Jewish leaders who are here to be a buffer, to put themselves in between protesters and police and say, let's please be peaceful. Let's work together, let's be collaborative. And we even had a group from the Billy Graham Ministries who said a prayer with me tonight, praying for the peace in our city, and it's great to see folks in our community reaching out to help.
How do you think having the National Guard there to guard some of the sort of key buildings, has that freed up officers who might otherwise have to do that? Absolutely.
The guardsmen and guardswomen are here from all over our state, and I've said welcome to several of them tonight. It's terrific to have them here. They really are stationed in front of our buildings. We want to make sure there's no more broken glass. We want to make sure that our businesses feel safe, that our property is safe, and that does free up our police officers to be out in the crowds, to be in the street, on bicycles, walking and patrolling, and making sure we're keeping our streets safe.
How do you get word of the curfew that's going to take place in about 2 hours and 10 minutes? How do you get word to the protesters? I mean, will you just tell them over loudspeakers? Have they already been informed as much as possible?
Well, we've communicated that to all the major news stations, and we have our normal channels of communication. Also, of course, our officers are informed, and through their system of communication and command, and they're going to be talking to protesters and letting them know wherever they encounter them that they have until midnight, and then they need to be out of the streets.
I was told you have spoken to Secretary Hillary Clinton tonight. I'm curious as what you talked about.
Secretary Clinton did call me, and she wanted to let me know that she is thinking about Charlotte. She's been here several times during the campaign. I told her it could almost be a second home to her. She's been here so often. But she did lend her support to the city. She understands that big cities have challenges, and she wanted me to know that if there's anything she could do to help, that she'd be happy to do that.
There was some talk perhaps of Trump, or I mean, are you in favor of any candidates actually coming to Charlotte in the coming days? Whether it's Trump or
no,
Clinton?
I have not heard of any campaigns coming to Charlotte in the coming immediate week. Usually we only find out about that 3 or 4 days ahead because of security. So I haven't heard of anyone coming here in the next week, but Secretary Clinton has been here 4 times already this year.
A lot of discussion over the police releasing or holding back the video from the public. Do you believe the video of the shooting should be released and released soon?
Well, I actually was able to view that video today, and I am in agreement with our chief as well as the family of Mr. Scott. And both the family and the chief has said the video is ambiguous. It is not clear. When you have a body camera in motion, you have things in the way and obscured views, it is not clear. And I lean toward transparency. I lean toward wanting to release the video, but I also am aware that there is an active, ongoing investigation, an independent investigation by the State Bureau of Investigation that is ongoing, and I am trying to strike that delicate balance between transparency to the public, but also knowing that we want that investigation to have the highest integrity. We want it to have all the pieces in place before that is completed. And so I am working with our police chief, and will continue to stay in touch with law enforcement and striking that delicate balance as to when that video might be released.
You said that you're in agreement with the family that the video is ambiguous, not clear. Is it clear to you that Mr. Scott actually had a gun in his hand? Because the family attorney says they did not see that.
It is not a very clear picture, and the gun in question is a small gun, and it was not easy to see with the way the motion was happening, so it is ambiguous.
Mayor Roberts, I appreciate your time tonight. I wish you the best in a difficult situation. Let's hope tonight is much better than the last two nights. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Charlotte is a great city, and we're going to get through this.
We'll continue to check in with you, Mayor Roberts. Thank you. I want to check in again with our Boris Sanchez, who's out on the streets. Boris, do the protesters, are they aware of this curfew that's going to take place in about 2 hours?
Yeah, Anderson, I just asked a handful of them. Some of them told me they had no idea there was a curfew. Some of them knew that it was midnight, but obviously that's beyond what their focus is right now. It does not appear that curfew is going to remain intact for a lot of people out here. There's a lot of anger in the crowd. They moved through a detention center a short while ago. They actually circled the detention center and started yelling at the prisoners inside, "We see you, we love you." They circled back around after leaving that area. They're coming back toward downtown, toward the Omni Hotel, where things really got out of hand last night. From what I can see, there is National Guard at certain key points across the city, in front of a couple of bus terminals over there. They were also at the detention center, at the police station as well. Earlier tonight, there was a large group of heavily armed National Guard outside the Omni Hotel with a very large vehicle with them. If they're still there, these protesters are going to confront them face to face, as they have throughout the night. They've stopped in certain key places, again, chanting and yelling slogans, and now they're continuing to move toward that direction. Again, back toward downtown, where all of that we saw last night really started in that intersection, Anderson.
Boris, I'm worried about you walking backwards. You're doing it very well, but I'm worried about you. Boris, we're going to continue checking with you throughout.
We've got guys that are watching my back.
Okay,
so
all right.
We've got guys that are watching, so.
All right, I'm going to let you go. We'll continue to check in with you. One man is doing what he can to keep the peace in Charlotte, one hug at a time. His name is Ken DK. He started something called the Free Hugs Project, a group that went around in the middle of the chaos last night giving police officers hugs. Ken joins me now, along with Pastor Steve Knight of the Mission Gathering Christian Church. Ken, an incredible thing that you're doing. I see your shirt there, Free Hugs. You were out hugging police officers last night in Charlotte amidst the protests. Not everyone appreciated, I'm sure, you giving hugs to police officers, though some of the protesters, I understand, kind of got angry with you. What did people say to you? What do you say to them?
Well, I think that, you know, people are hurting, and I understand that, and I think it was very tough for them to see, you know, a black man hugging police officers, which to me it doesn't really make sense, you know, because I don't see it as it's us versus the police, you know, we're all human beings. And so I was pointing out to them that those specific officers didn't do anything to them, and so it's very important for us to be able to spread love towards one another. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble here with the motorcycles.
It's okay. It's all right. I understand. I mean, at one point in the video from last night, you tell a woman you're arguing with that you can't even reason with her. I'm wondering just how important it is, do you think, the ability to have a dialogue about police shootings, about protests on both sides of the issue?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that, you know, being able to open up that communication about how we move past some of these issues, and I think that there's this idea that people have, well, I'm angry and so I'm just going to lash out, and that's not the way to move about it. And so I try to make sure that when I'm out, I'm just reminding people that love and peaceful protests and things, that's going to be the way that we get past some of these things and be able to sit down and have real discussions as human beings.
Pastor Knight, you were at the protest last night. I understand you actually witnessed the shooting. How shocked were you that something like this is happening in your community on your doorstep?
On one hand, Anderson, it was very shocking, and at the same time, it's something that we've seen across the country over the last couple of years, as many of us have woken up to the reality of racial injustice in this country. And to be out there last night was what started out very peaceful turned out to be a very scary night. And it did not have to go that way, and that's what was very disappointing. The city is hurting, the city is grieving. We've now lost 2 of our citizens, and we're looking for answers.
Well, Pastor Knight, I appreciate you being out there yet again. I think what both of you are doing, and Ken, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to us. Be careful out there. We'll continue to touch base with you in the coming days. We'll be right back.
This is CNN Breaking News.
The breaking news tonight coming out of Charlotte, North Carolina. You're looking at live pictures now. There is an uneasy calm tonight amid peaceful protests just one day after those streets that you're looking at right there erupted in violence over the fatal police shooting of Keith Lamont Scott. We're going to continue to watch these live pictures. This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. This is a scene in Charlotte where the mayor, Jennifer Roberts, has ordered just a short time ago a midnight curfew to stay in effect as long as they deem it is warranted. And again, you're looking live at the streets of Charlotte, North Carolina. When last we left you, those streets had erupted in chaos. Police were trying to get control, and now they are doing it again, but not as violent as last night. It appears that it has been mostly peaceful tonight. Last night, of course, someone was injured in all of this and killed, and then one officer hurt. The night before, 16 police officers hurt in all of this. Let's get straight now to CNN's Boris Sanchez, who has been out in the midst of this for several evenings now. So, Boris, last night was a night of riots. The National Guard has been called in today. What's going on where you are this evening?
Hey, Don, right now we're watching this young man get up in the crowd and start speaking, trying to get the attention of the crowd. He's trying to maintain the peace. We've just heard people start yelling at him, obscenities toward the police officers. I actually just talked to a couple people a little while ago that said they weren't aware that there was a curfew at midnight. So it's not clear that this crowd is going to disperse at that time. You know, this is the Omni Hotel. This is the scene yesterday where all the violence was sparked. We saw a SWAT team, a line of SWAT team go into the hotel, and then protesters started banging on the glass. We saw them have this altercation outside. That's where that young man you were talking about got hurt. The 26-year-old, who we later found out today was actually killed, reportedly by another civilian. People here in the crowd do not believe that that was the case. There's a deep mistrust of police, and they say that that account is not what happened. They say that's inaccurate. Obviously, it's a lot of anger in the crowd here. We're going to keep following them, but right now they're stationary in front of the Omni Hotel. They've walked around the entire downtown area, stopping at different key points. First the park, then the police department, where they were for several moments. They were there with National Guard. I should mention there is a strong National Guard presence across the city at key points tonight. They also stopped at a detention center yelling and trying to get the attention of the prisoners that were there, yelling, "We see you, we love you." At one point, we started seeing lights flickering inside the detention center. So obviously they got their attention. They walked back down toward another park. There was a slow pause there, a quick chant, and then they kept moving. And they started coming down this way toward the Omni Hotel. And now they're lined up here, Don. From what we can tell, there's really this unease in the crowd. There are some people that want this to remain peaceful. I've heard some people say, hey, we have to get out of here at midnight. Some people don't even know that there's a curfew. And some people are yelling at this guy that's trying to say, you know, we should keep this peaceful. And they're saying, you know, that's not enough. We've gone through this over and over again. and nothing has changed. So, Don, we're going to send it back to you. Right now, we're getting some agitators in the crowd making threats toward us. So we're just going to send it back to you as we deal with this situation.
That always happens in this situation, Boris. Make sure you take care of yourself out there. And as we saw unfold here last night on CNN, members of the media targeted, several of them hurt yesterday evening, including one of our very own, Ed Lavandera, and also two people at least that we know of from other stations there in the Charlotte area. That's our Boris Sanchez reporting. As Boris was out yesterday evening, he said he didn't see much of a visible presence of police officers in some area, and now the National Guard has been called in, a much bigger presence this evening. Let's check in with CNN's Brian Todd, also out in the crowd. Brian, tell me what's happening where you are. What is the police presence?
Police presence very strong on just about every corner, Don. They're not overwhelming, they're not lining the streets, but they are on most corners, along with some National Guard. In the corners where the police are not present, you'll usually see at least a couple of National Guardsmen there. This crowd that I'm with here has moved around the jailhouse at least a couple of times now. They've made 3 different stops in front of the jailhouse. At one point, they appeared to kind of storm one of the entrances to the jail here. It's a massive complex, the Charlotte City Jail. They didn't try to get in. There were National Guardsmen guarding the entrances there, but they kind of came up and they were confrontational with them, yelled at them, pointed at them, yelled obscenities at them. So that's been kind of the dynamic in a lot of different intersections here. Sometimes they will block intersections and chant and do other things. And other times the police will appear to block intersections and then let the protesters go by. So it's been kind of a tense dynamic between the protesters and law enforcement, but so far very peaceful. Don.
Brian, a couple of questions for you. We know that there is this curfew that Mayor Jennifer Roberts has signed into order, enacting this mandatory curfew at midnight. I'm not sure if they are announcing it to people on bullhorns. Are they aware of this curfew? Are they saying they're going to defy it? Have you heard anything?
They are aware of it because one of the men in the bullhorn, manning the bullhorn over here. Sorry, guys, we have to kind of move away. Sorry. One of the men leading this march, who was on a bullhorn, did announce it to this crowd that there is going to be a curfew at midnight. They did not react angrily. They kind of groaned and, they weren't happy with it, but they didn't react too angrily. They kind of thought that something like this could happen because the mayor and the police chief have talked about this most of the day, that they could do this. The chief and the mayor made the announcement fairly late in the evening here. But, they're kind of going along with it. Now, what happens at midnight, that's going to be another story, Don. We'll have to watch that very closely and follow these crowds.
And, Brian, I need to tell the audience that this curfew is going to remain into effect each day until the end of the state of emergency is declared, because, of course, now Charlotte, North Carolina, under a state of emergency until the official proclamation is revoked. My other question to you is, as has been reported, many of the people who have been arrested were not from the area. Have you had a chance to speak to people? Are you able to determine that this evening?
We've spoken to a lot of different people, Don, and so it's kind of a good mix. There's some people who are coming from out of town, in other towns in North Carolina. Other people are from here. I couldn't tell you the percentages, but there are people here from all over the place, Don. But they've really taken some pride, actually, in making these demonstrations tonight peaceful. They've talked a lot about it. They've kind of yelled it over loudspeakers. There have been community activists who've gotten between the crowds and the police to try to make sure that there isn't... Lives matter. Trying to make sure that there isn't a violent confrontation between protesters and the police. And they're making some other announcements over here. I can't quite make out what it is.
Let's listen.
But, this has been kind of going on all night. Street debates, street speeches, chants like this, mostly peaceful. Some anger in the streets, some confrontational moments between these demonstrators and National Guardsmen, these demonstrators and police. But so far, Don, very, very peaceful.
So is it one leader, one person on a bullhorn? Is it a number of people who are directing the crowd, or does it appear to be any central leadership, or just people out randomly giving orders?
Don, I think I've seen about 6 different leaders of these marches. We've been with about 5 or 6 different crowds. They each seem to have a different leader. I do not sense that there is any central leadership to this. Now, in each crowd, you can tell pretty much who the leader is. In this crowd, it's this gentleman here with the white bullhorn. We'll try to get out of his line of sound here, but this is the guy who's clearly leading this group right here.
Yeah. Okay, Brian Todd.
The people are leading it, and what we want is the videotape. What we want to see is how you saying that this person damn near whatever pointed a gun or whatever. We want to get that, but if we do not see a videotape, then we will escalate every day. If we got to boycott, we're going to have to boycott. What we going to do? We got to boycott. We got to boycott. Guess what?
So let me explain to the viewer just for a moment. Let's stay on this picture. Brian, don't go anywhere. People are very upset there because they want to see this this videotape that appears that shows the confrontation with Keith Lamont Hill there in Charlotte, North Carolina. Scott, excuse me. And they're trying to figure out if he had a gun or if he had a book. According to the police chief, he's saying that you can't really determine. And obviously, these people are upset. So I just want to warn you, some of the language you may hear may not be suitable for all ages. And so they're demanding to hear that tape, and we're going to go back and just listen. Now, Brian Todd is in the crowd there. So, Brian, the folks are upset there, holding up signs, and you said that they're marching around the jail, and is that in fact at the police department?
Y'all got tasers and all that shit, but yet you still use.
Yeah, they have marched around the jail, Don, and there has been a fairly significant police presence blocking them. They're also the police are also blocking the streets at certain points, some side streets, so that they can kind of channel them just on the main streets where they can be watched more easily. So they're heading down now toward the uptown area. This is the area where some of the violence happened last night, and some of our other teams are up there. And, you know, it's very likely that this crowd may meet up with another crowd that we're told might be near the Omni Hotel. But again, some of these crowds, I have to say, are getting smaller now. So we're going to see if they are organized enough to meet up with those crowds, Don.
Brian Todd out in the crowd. Brian, I'll let you continue on and do your reporting, and we'll get back to you. CNN's Ed Lavandera is also on the scene for us tonight in Charlotte, North Carolina, as this continues to unfold here. Ed, you were one of the people who was targeted by some of these protesters last night. What's going on where you are now?
Well, right now the group that has been marching throughout most of the evening through downtown Charlotte continues its move, just kind of improvising its stops and continuing through the city here tonight. So they continue to do that. There is a group of a bunch of officers who kind of follow the group. Right. So you can see there's a handful of these guys.
The evidence shows
cursing about the midnight curfew here. So that's going to be the difficult thing here tonight. What are these guys going to do once the clock strikes midnight? And are they going to be a
Yeah, so Ed, you know, again, I'm going to warn the audience because some of the things you're going to hear, again, might not be suitable for younger people and for delicate ears, but that happens when you're covering these types of incidents in the streets. You don't have control over what the people there will say, and again, we have a duty to cover it. So again, this is what's happening in Charlotte, North Carolina. Our correspondents are out in the field covering this. Boris Sanchez is there, Ed Lavandera, and Brian Todd doing a great job out covering these protests, which turned violent last night and the evening before. Several people, including police officers, have been hurt in these protests. But so far tonight, it just appears that the crowds are marching around as Brian Todd said, around the jail, around the police department. They have been confronting police, at least with their language and sort of squaring off with them, but nothing physical and nothing violent to report thus far, and let's hope it remains that way. Ground level now that you're looking at, and there's a sky shot from our affiliate WBTV, and of course with our affiliates we couldn't cover this, so we appreciate that. We're watching some very similar pictures from tonight as we watched last evening. I want to tell you again that there is a mandatory curfew that has been put into effect not long ago by the mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina, and that curfew is going to remain in effect as long as the state of emergency is declared there until this official proclamation is revoked. And as you can hear, The protesters on the streets there shouting, "No justice, no peace." The mayor of Charlotte, Jennifer Roberts, was on with us last evening, and she was on with Anderson tonight saying that she has viewed the body camera footage of the shooting of Keith Lamont Scott, and that she is in agreement with the police chief who came out earlier, Police Chief Putney, and the Scott's family attorney, who is saying that there is no definitive visual evidence to determine whether Scott was holding or pointing a gun at the time of the shooting. The police chief has been interviewed, though he is saying from other evidence and other information that the police department has that he believes that their initial finding and reporting is correct. They believe that Mr. Scott was holding a gun, but he would not say what that evidence is that he believes leads them to that. Also, just a short time ago, the mayor said that the motion in the video and the obscured views made the key moment unclear, that video that everyone is calling for. And this is a quote from her. She said, when you have body camera in motion and things in the way and obscured views, it is not clear, she told Anderson. She said that she would be leaning toward releasing this footage to the public, but she has to remain mindful of the ongoing independent investigation into the Scott shooting while considering her position. And as we spoke to the governor of North Carolina last night, he was saying, and it is his belief, as it has been all along, because he proposed legislation which is going to take effect on October 1, that there should be body cameras, but that body camera video should be released, or the dash cam video should be released limited, should be limitedly released only to family members and only to investigators and not to the public at large, because he wanted to protect the rights and the privacy of the officers involved in these incidents. So again, we are following these pictures. We are looking at live pictures in Charlotte, North Carolina that we will continue to follow here on CNN. I want to get now to the family of the Scott family attorney. Of course, they have seen these police videos of this fatal shooting. Justin Bamberg is one of the family's attorneys, issuing a statement tonight saying, quote, when told by police to exit his vehicle, Mr. Scott did so in a very calm, non-aggressive manner. While police did give him several commands, he did not aggressively approach them or raise his hands at members of law enforcement at any time. It is impossible to discern from the videos what, if anything, Mr. Scott is holding in his hands. And when he was shot and killed, Mr. Scott's hands were by his side and he was slowly walking backwards, and that's unquote. Scott family attorney is calling for the videos to be released to the public, and joining me now on the phone is Eduardo Curry, another of the family's attorneys. Thank you, Mr. Curry, for joining us. First of all, my condolences to your clients on the loss of their family member. How are they doing?
Thank you very much, Don, for having me. They're doing the best that they can. They're in intense mourning. This situation has changed the entire dynamics of their life. And so at this particular point, the family is struggling to maintain the continuity that they need amongst each other. And they have a situation where it's surreal for them, actually. Yeah. They've lost a father, a husband, a brother, an uncle, a family member from a very close and tightly knitted family.
Yeah, and of course, they released a statement yesterday saying that they did not condone this violence. They wanted people to protest peacefully. That did not happen yesterday, but it looks like it's happening so far. I have to ask you, today the family watched the video of the shooting. Can you tell us about it?
Well, I could give you some, maybe a bird's eye view. One of the things that the family did was they were very intense in watching the video. It's traumatic enough, but it's more traumatic when you know the person that you're watching is no longer alive and has their life terminated. So the family is in a sense of sorrow, and they believe that at some point there will be a disclosure of that video, and they want that video released to the public so that the public could see exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm. So we just heard part of the statement from the family. They say that now they have more questions, Mr. Curry, than answers. What are those questions specifically?
questions, I think, are going to surround issues of why did the police have a confrontation with Keith Scott in the very beginning. He wasn't a person of interest. He wasn't doing anything illegal. The police allegedly were there at the scene to execute, according to their statement, a warrant on someone else, an unrelated person. He was not a person of interest. And so those kinds of questions have started to rise to the top as to how and why he was in contact with law enforcement in the first place.
Okay. So let's talk about, because the full statement says, and I'm going to read some of it for you, and if you can help me, I would appreciate it. It says, after watching the video, the family again has more questions than answers, which I just asked you about. When told by police to exit his vehicle, Mr. Scott did so in a very calm, non-aggressive manner. Did you witness that on the video?
Yes, I did. Okay. In fact, we witnessed him coming out the vehicle and in a meek, mild manner, with his hands down, started to retreat away from law enforcement that was confronting him in the front. And I'm not sure that he even realized that there was some outside of his peripheral vision to the left.
Okay.
But he was obeying as best as we thought he could the commands that police were giving him.
Okay, so there were in the video, Mr. Curry, officers were in front of him, and there were other officers in his periphery that are maybe behind him or on the side of him that he couldn't see. Is that what you're saying, possibly?
Well, yes, and of course, it's our understanding that the person that was identified by the police themselves was one of the individuals that were actually outside the peripheral of Mr. Scott.
Okay. Can you do me a favor? Can you walk me through it? Let's start from the beginning. So when you go through this video, do you see police approach him in the car? Is he sitting in the car? What do we see?
It is our understanding that he was sitting in the car. You really couldn't see him, but from the body cam, the dash cam, you could actually see the police surrounding the car, some beating on the window, others making statements, some with their guns drawn. And so it's a very traumatic situation because this man had been sitting in his vehicle and had a pattern in the past of sitting in his vehicle to wait on family members as they came from school. And so this is a normal pattern for him sitting there. It wasn't the first time, but certainly on the 20th, it was the last time that he would be waiting for one of his children to be dropped off and then transport them back.
Okay, so he's sitting in the car, and you said he's surrounded by police officers. And I'm going to go on and read the rest of the statement, and if you can explain this to us. It says, while police did give him several commands, he did not aggressively approach them or raise his hands at members of law enforcement at any time. The question is going to be, if you read closely into the statement, did he comply? Because the statement doesn't say he complied with all of police orders. It just says that he did not aggressively approach them or raise his hands to members of law enforcement.
Well, we stand with that, that he was not aggressive at all. In fact, he was very, very passive and looked from the video to be shocked and possibly even frightened as to how the actions were unfolding between he and law enforcement.
Yeah.
And so he was backing away when he was actually shot.
Yeah. It says you can't discern in the video, with his hands to his side, he said you can't discern in the video if anything Mr. Scott was holding his hands, and when he was shot and killed, Mr. Scott's hands were by his sides. And he was slowly walking backwards. I have a question for you. A source close to this investigation confirms to CNN that this photo from the scene, if we can put that up, it shows the gun that was found by police. Can you comment on that, Mr. Curry?
At this point, we're just not sure about that photo and other photos that may depict it. We did not see a gun in the video.
Mm-hmm. Was he licensed to carry?
Sir?
Was he licensed to carry a gun?
Oh,
You don't
at
know.
this point, we don't know. We're actually just early in the case of doing the due diligence and research in order to assure that we know everything we can about this situation, about the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police and about how this encounter unfolded.
And his family has said that, as we're watching pictures, these pictures, we're keeping a close eye on him, Mr. Curry. But anyway, I may have to cut away from you. But the family has said that they don't believe that he, to their knowledge, he has never had a gun and was not in possession of a gun.
That is the position of the family.
Okay. And how has the family reacted to these protests?
It's traumatic. It's been traumatic. The wife has lost a 25-year covenant partner. The children have lost their father. The nieces and nephews have lost their uncle. This has created a tremendous traumatic experience for this family.
Yeah.
And at this point, they're still in mourning and grief.
Yeah. Eduardo Curry, the attorney, one of the attorneys for the Scott family, and again, our condolences to the family. And we thank you so much for joining us. I know it's a very busy time and a tough time for everyone there in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Thank you for having us.
And I appreciate you taking my questions. Thank you very much. We're going to continue to follow this developing story coming out of North Carolina this evening. As you can see, protesters were on the streets there again this evening. We are getting very close to a curfew that happens at midnight Eastern time. Protests going on in the city of Charlotte.